Hi, my name is Sadie Sylvester, and today we're going to be going over aging in society. Okay, so starting off with the Western culture, we see more of a different viewpoint on this Western culture. In the Western culture, elders are seen more as a burden, not more as like a blessing and something that happens in life. As we all know, getting older is just something that happens in life. We start as young and we just kind of grow older, and with that, we also run into like some older issues with just like health problems and stuff. But in this Western culture, aging is often seen as a decline and a major health problem. They don't really see it as like a natural part of life and kind of just what happens as we grow old. Honestly, it's more of like an individualistic like mindset. And like I said earlier, it's seen more as like a burden and not more as a blessing, where we all should be gathering and kind of like lifting each other up. Now jumping into the non-Western perspective, here's the perspective that we've seen, that they're more seen as like the wise ones, and that family around them and relatives, and they kind of tend to go towards their elders for like advice. And in places like China and Japan and even India, we see these communities that elders are looked at with like high respect. And like I said about like advice, families take care of them with great love and passion, and kind of just these cultural values are impacted with healthcare laws and kind of how older people live every day. It's very centered around how they can kind of like lift them all up, and yeah. Okay, now jumping into the treatment of older and elder people, like kind of throughout times. So we're going to jump in from the past as from the historical perspective. In the past, older adults were seen more as like the heart of the community, looked at with like great high respect. And based off of their like life experiences, all these people kind of turned to them, looked for them for advice, and they were very honored in their families and communities. And now in like the 21st century, today elders are often seen more as a burden. Like I said earlier, society has become more selfish and individualistic. Many people focus on themselves instead of valuing our older generation. I think like this really comes into play when, they do start to get older, and if they develop things like dementia and stuff, like family members and people around them kind of look at it as like a hassle and like something that they have to do, rather than back in the day it was more of like, you looked up to them with like pride and honor and advice. Not that the 21st century doesn't do that, but we definitely kind of see a difference throughout times. Okay, so 3 trends that I decided to like work on and talk about was poor health and lack of care, social isolation, and age-based discrimination. So let's jump into those. Okay, trend 1, we got poor health and lack of care. In this, poor health and lack of care and proper medical care are some of the major struggles in the elder kind of population and generation for today, especially when doctors, I feel like these days, and TikTok and social media, they're always focusing on like the younger generation. And what I mean by this is just they're always kind of like focused on like the younger generation, and like coming up with like, for an example, just like things on TikTok will like blow up about like, oh, like face and like the young kids and like stuff like that. And I just feel like the attention is like really shift on like the younger generation. I feel like an age discrimination kind of like comes into this with healthcare, meaning older adults might not get the best treatment. And as like time's going on, obviously everything is kind of getting like developed and stuff. But yeah, no, just like the attention these days are getting more focused on the younger generation, and elders don't get kind of like as much attention. Another thing to add is just like doctors may focus on younger patients, because of this, assuming older people just experience like decline, and that kind of like they're not getting better. But yeah, obviously this can lead to worse health outcomes, with like seniors feeling ignored or frustrated, which obviously we know like the mental plays a lot into their physical aspect as well. Okay, trend number 2, social isolation. This is a super big one, as many adults might just start to feel like lonely in their social circles. Also, socialization grows as people age, with smaller circles kind of like decreasing and getting smaller. This is causing feelings of loneliness and depression. What I've also noticed in like my family too is like they start to kind of catch on that they are getting older. And I know that it does kind of, I think about it, it's it does kind of talk to themselves in their head. This is super big. That can lead to depression, anxiety, less physical activity. Also, as they do get older, they start to, one of them passes and stuff like that. I know that it's going to make that really hard and to stay connected, but unfortunately, we need to kind of see a change in this, because we'll talk about this later in the video, but definitely having that stimulation in the brain is really, really important to kind of keep them up and motivating and keeping that stimulation. Okay, so trend number 3, we're jumping into age-based discrimination. Here we see that, kind of touched on it earlier, but older adults may receive lower quality care simply just because of their age or how society these days are viewing them. They're kind of being treated as less important or overlooked, and it can have a huge effect on their confidence and overall well-being. Age-based discrimination means some elders are overlooked, which later down the road can really affect their self-esteem. And this discrimination can lead to them receiving fewer resources, less attention, and also as individuals kind of thinking they're not enough, and that they're not as important, which is obviously what we don't want anyone to feel like. Okay, so we're going to go on a strength-based approach. With this, we see promoting physical activity is super important, fostering lifelong learning, kind of like I said earlier, really keeping that brain stimulated. And if they can't do physical movement, then brain movement, obviously keeping that brain moving and kind of focusing it on a positive aspects. And I know that we can foster lifelong learning with just even little things, if at a senior center and putting things together and doing a puzzle or anything that just kind of encourages a social connection. I think that's a really important way to just go about things when we need to provide support and stuff for our elders, and also kind of having our family and caregiving involved, and that education is super important as well. Okay, so how this connects to my career, and I'm going to be focusing more on the Western culture. With this, I think that this is huge when it comes to mental health support, promoting family communication, grief counseling, encourage self-esteem, as well as group therapy and support groups. So if you couldn't tell by those, I am studying to become a counselor. So these are actually super important in my career, because having all these counseling services and grief counseling and family group sessions, it's just going to be a really, really good way. And we want to provide that service for older adults to cope with anxiety, depression, loneliness, encourage therapy as a process for the emotional challenge of aging, which obviously is a life thing, and we're all going to age at one point. But moving on into references, these are just my references for everything kind of that I talked about. And yeah, I will post my speaker notes down below. Thank you.